The bus groaned like a dying beast as it pulled up to the outer gates of CECOT, Centro de Confinamiento del Terror. The sun baked the concrete. Heat shimmered off the razor wire like ghosts rising from the pavement. Inside the bus, Aaron Vega clenched his fists until his nails bit into skin. 22 years old. Short-time thug. Long-time survivor. But this was different. He'd heard the stories. Everyone had. CECOT wasn't a prison. It was a machine. A monster with steel lungs and concrete bones, built to grind men into ash and rebuild them into something useful. Or disposable. They said you didn't leave CECOT. You either disappeared, or became part of it. The guards barked orders in clipped Spanish. Vega stepped off the bus into blinding white sunlight and immediately felt eyes on him, not just from the towers, but from within. From the walls. The shadows. The very floor beneath him. As they led the prisoners in, chains rattling like bones, he passed rows of faces. Hollow eyes. Scarred cheeks. Tattoos like flags of war. One word kept floating through the chaos like blood in water. Phantasmas. Ghosts. And then another. Fuego. Fire. Aaron was processed like cattle. Stripped. Sprayed. Photographed. Numbered. Cell block D5. Deep in the eastern wing. Known unofficially as La Caldera? The cauldron. Even the guards didn't linger there. As he was led through the labyrinth of metal gates and echoing corridors, Vega noticed something strange. No one spoke. No insults. No threats. Just silence. A silence that crawled up his spine like frost. Then he saw them. Two men standing at the end of the hall, facing each other across a red-painted line dividing Block D. One dressed in all black. Head shaved. Skeletal face tattoo that curled around his left eye. The other taller. Bare-chested. A burn scar running from jaw to collarbone. A sun tattooed over his heart. They didn't move. Didn't blink. But as Vega was marched past them, he felt it. The weight of a war balanced on a knife's edge. By nightfall, Vega was thrown into a dim cell, barely enough space to turn. His new cellmate leaned in the corner, smoking a cigarette made from toilet paper and dried leaves. "Name's Rojas," the man muttered. "You talk too loud, you die. You move too fast, you die. You act tough, you die slower." He flicked ash onto the floor and handed Vega a crumpled piece of cloth. Black. Faded. A ghost stitched in white thread. "You're with us now. Phantasmas. Welcome to the war." Vega blinked. "What war?" Rojas looked up, his eyes two cold knives. "The only one that matters." The next morning, Aaron Vega woke to screams echoing through the ventilation shafts. Not just one voice. A dozen. Maybe more. He sat up on the thin cot, his heart already racing. Rojas didn't move. Just stared at the wall, exhaling smoke in slow spirals. "That's Block C," he muttered. "Initiation." Vega frowned. "Initiation into what?" Rojas turned his head, eyes cold and tired. "The Fuego boys. They don't let you in without fire. First, they burn your skin. Then, they burn your soul." They were marched into the yard by noon. Heat smothered the concrete like a furnace lid. Two towers loomed on opposite ends of the yard, both scarred by rust and old bullet holes. One bore a spray-painted skull, cracked and faded, the mark of Los Phantasmas. The other, a crude sun, drawn in smeared red. Hios del Fuego. Vega saw them now, the fire sons. Shirtless. Covered in burned scars and sun tattoos, some carved right into the skin. Their leader stood above the others like a gladiator, tall, bronze, his head wrapped in crimson cloth. They called him Rey Fuego. King Fire. He paced with a slow, deliberate swagger. Eyes scanning the yard like a predator looking for meat. And then, for the first time, their eyes met. Vega felt a chill run through his gut. Not from fear. From recognition. He knew that face. Years ago. Back in San Salvador. There had been a street riot. Fires. A boy, maybe 16, had hurled a Molotov cocktail through a church window, laughing like the devil himself. That boy had grown into this man. Rey Fuego smirked, then raised his hand in a gesture that silenced half the yard. Then he pointed, straight at Vega. "You've got a ghost on your back," Rey called out. "And ghosts burn easy." The entire yard tensed. Phantasmus shifted. Rojas stepped forward, his hand subtly brushing against Vega's arm. "Don't move. Don't speak." But it was too late. Rey had declared the game. That night Vega barely slept. He sat in his bunk, staring at the ghost cloth in his hands. "What is this war really about?" he asked finally. Rojas took a long drag from his cigarette. "Power. Territory. History." Then he leaned in closer. "But not just that." He tapped the wall behind them. "You hear that?" Vega listened. At first, nothing. Then, a faint hum. Voices? No. Whispers. Coming from inside the walls. Rojas whispered. "This place was never meant to hold men. It was meant to hide them. Bury them. And now, the fire wants to dig them up. The ghosts want to keep them buried." In the morning, the first body dropped. One of the guards. Slit throat. No sound. No struggle. Just dead. Word spread fast. No one claimed it. But Vega noticed something no one else did. The man's boots were missing. Burnt rubber marks led away from the corpse. Like footsteps. Headed straight toward the fire wing. The body was gone by sunrise. No alarm. No investigation. Just a faint bloodstain left drying in the heat. The guards said nothing. But word traveled fast. Aaron Vega sat in the mess hall, barely touching the slop on his tray. Around him, men whispered. Watched. Waited. Everyone knew what it meant. The fire had struck first. The ghosts had to answer. Balance was everything inside CECOT. Later that day, Rojas led Vega to a maintenance corridor behind the laundry wing, a place not covered by cameras. There, a small group of phantasmas waited. All silent. All staring. In the center, sitting cross-legged on a concrete slab like a king without a crown, was El Padre. They called him that because no one knew his real name. Not the guards. Not even the warden. He had gray in his beard. Ink running from his neck to his fingertips. And eyes like frozen oil. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. "You saw him," El Padre said. Vega nodded. "Rey Fuego marked you. That cannot be ignored." Rojas shifted uncomfortably. "He's not ready." El Padre raised a single finger. "Neither were we once." Then, he turned to Vega. "You want to understand the war? You want to survive?" Vega nodded. El Padre smiled. "Then you'll need to see what they do to become fire." That night, Vega was smuggled into a supply corridor by a crooked guard on the ghost payroll. He crouched behind a rusted grate, watching through a narrow slit into the fire wing. What he saw burned itself into his brain. A circle of men, shirtless, covered in oil and ash. In the center, a young recruit. Bound. Terrified. Rey Fuego stepped forward, carrying a flaming brand. The recruit begged. Cried. It didn't matter. They pressed the brand against his chest, carving a sun into his flesh. Smoke filled the room. The boy screamed until his throat tore open. Then they all chanted. Del fuego venimos. Del fuego vivimos. Al fuego regresamos. From fire we came. Through fire we live. To fire we return. Vega turned away, sick rising in his gut. But El Padre's voice echoed in his memory. You want to survive? You need to understand. Back in his cell, Vega couldn't sleep. His thoughts spun like razor blades. What kind of war was this? It wasn't about drugs. Or money. It was about belief. Fire and ghosts. Burn or vanish. Two religions fighting for a soul no one would ever save. The next morning, everything changed. Rojas didn't show up for roll call. By lunch, his name was scratched from the wall. Vega asked a guard. The man didn't answer. But that night, someone slid something under Vega's cell door. A cloth. Black. Stained red. The ghost symbol had been burned through. And across the bottom, written in ash and blood, Convert or burn. The ghosts met in silence. Deep beneath the laundry block, behind a welded steel panel only 5 men in the entire prison knew about. There was a hollow, a concrete crawlspace once meant for plumbing. Now it was the heart of resistance. El Padre stood in the center, flanked by 2 men with their faces covered by hoods stitched with skulls. Aaron Vega entered behind one of the lookouts. His knees felt weak. His throat dry. He hadn't spoken a word since they found Rojas' cloth. The whispers wouldn't stop. Even in his dreams. Especially in his dreams. El Padre raised a hand. The room fell still. They've broken the balance, he said. The fire shed blood without permission. That demands an answer. One of the lieutenants, a tall man with silver earrings and a stitched cross on his neck, leaned forward. They want a war? We give them one. El Padre shook his head. No. Not yet. We don't give them fire. We give them silence. The kind that makes men go mad. Vega was pulled aside after the meeting by a short man with burns down both arms. Name's Sombra, he said. Means shadow. I'm gonna show you how ghosts fight. That night, Sombra led Vega through a forgotten duct shaft above the guards' patrol routes. They moved like smoke, stepping only where rust didn't squeal. They watched. Listened. Memorized. And when the time came, they struck. Not with blades. Not with guns. But with vanishing. 3 recruits from the fire went missing in 1 week. No blood. No trace. No word. 1 guard was found in the yard, his mouth sewn shut with thread from his own uniform. A simple message pinned to his chest. The dead do not scream. Rey Fuego snapped. He gathered his men in the chapel, an abandoned room with broken pews and shattered stained glass. There, under flickering light from a single overhead bulb, he gave a speech. You think we're afraid of shadows? He shouted. We were born in the dark. We were raised in smoke. But we are the fire. And fire purifies. His men roared back, fists pounding their chests. He held up a knife, long, curved, red with age. With this, I cut my way into power. And with this, I'll slice through every last ghost. Vega didn't sleep that night. He sat by the tiny slit of a window, watching the yard below. Movement in the dark. A shape. Then 2. Then more. The fire was hunting now. But Vega wasn't afraid anymore. Not because he trusted the ghosts. Not because he believed in El Padre. But because, somewhere inside him, the silence had started to make sense. In the morning, the war began. Not with guns. Not with riots. But with one simple act. In the middle of roll call, a member of the fire stepped out of formation and slit his own throat. No words. No note. Just blood. And carved into his chest with trembling hands. Let them whisper now. The prison didn't sleep that night. Lights stayed on. Gates remained locked. Even the guards kept their fingers on their triggers like the walls themselves might move. Aaron Vega sat cross-legged on the cold floor of his cell, staring at the cloth in his hands. The ghost had faded. Burned. Just ash and thread now. But in his chest, something had ignited. Rojas was gone. Sombra hadn't returned from the south yard. El Padre hadn't been seen in 2 days. And the fire, they were preparing for something big. At dawn it began. 3 simultaneous explosions rocked the central wing, handmade pipe bombs crafted from old plumbing and smuggled powder. Smoke poured into the corridors. Sirens wailed. But no alarms. No guards. No lockdown. Because this time, the guards weren't in charge. The ghosts moved like phantoms, striking from shadows, from rooftops, from the catwalks above the showers. The fire roared back like a beast awakened. Steel clashed. Flesh tore. And in the chaos, Vega ran. Not away, but toward the fire wing. He found Rey Fuego standing in the chapel again, blood dripping from a split brow, his red bandana soaked and torn. They stared at each other. 2 men. 2 weapons. 1 war. You think this place has room for ghosts? Rey growled. This is a furnace. We burn everything that's weak. Vega raised the razor Rojas had hidden in the toilet tank before he disappeared. And what happens? He said quietly. When the fire runs out of air? They fought like animals. No rules. No mercy. Just fists, blades, blood. Vega was faster. Rey was stronger. But the razor cut deep. And when it ended, Vega stood over him, breath ragged, hands trembling. Rey looked up, smiled through bloody teeth. You're not a ghost, he whispered. You're just smoke. And then he passed out. The yard was still by nightfall. Bodies. Scars. Silence. But it wasn't over. Not really. Because in the morning, new buses would arrive. New soldiers. New believers. New wars. CECOT wasn't a prison. It was a cycle. And Vega? He sat alone on the chapel steps, staring at the rising sun through broken glass, blood drying on his knuckles. Not a ghost. Not a son. Just a man. In a place where men didn't last.
If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Thank you for watching.